They Called Us Enemies is a graphic novel written by Georg Tekia along with Justin Eisner and Stephen Scott. The art is by Harmony Becker. The story is the life account of Georg Tekia as his family was relocated to the Japanese-American internment camps, following Executive Order 9066. Mr. Tekia chose the graphic novel format specifically because he wanted to reach a younger generation, felt that a visual storytelling made the memory of the camps undeniable. The story is told through the eyes of a child who doesn't fully understand the politics of his predicament and imprisonment. Mr. Harmony draws young George looking excited and curious about the imprisonment. This creates a dissonance as the child only sees it as a grand adventure, while the adult Mr. McKay provides the heartbreaking reality through narration. Harmony also provides the feeling of the imprisonment, showing the barbed wire fence always in the background and cutting across the sky. The panels feel crowded, with widened borders and characters barely fitting into the page. The book jumps between George's childhood in the 40s and his adult life, often giving speeches. Watch how the inking style stays consistent, but the panel borders might change. In May 1942, two soldiers arrived at the Tekia home. Executive Order 9066 ordering all Japanese American citizens who lived within the disclosed war zones of America would be relocated to internment camps. The first camp that the Tekia family arrives in is the Warhol, Arkansas. The story is being seen through Tekia as a child, as him and his brother Henry try to play and entertain themselves while being imprisoned in the camp. Mr. Tekia gives the history and the main events in the narration, jumping between the two stories. Surprisingly, things seem to achieve a sort of normalcy until the loyalty crisis worsens their condition, as both of Mr. McKay's parents were labeled no-nos on their loyalty questionnaires.
So, the book covers a pretty heavy subject, the Japanese-American internment camps of 1940. It's not the proudest time in American history, but it is important to have these stories told, and I really appreciate that Georg Tekia was able to sit down and tell this story, especially in the format that I love, which is comics and graphic novels. The one thing I really appreciate about Georg Tekia's retelling of this story is how he doesn't try to over-dramatize it. He gives the impression that he's telling actual stories that he remembers happening. He tells stories about going to the movies while there, of hanging out with his brother Henry while he was down there, of his mom making the forced train ride they had to take to Arkansas. They originally lived in LA and had to take a bus all the way to Arkansas to get to the internment camp. How his mom made it more enjoyable by sneaking snacks and drinks into the train with her so that her kids would have something to do. Matter of fact, throughout most of the story, it is Georg Tekia kind of having fond memories of the place, of him thinking it was like a grand adventure, of the boy wonder of, we're going to a new place he's never been before, he's doing something he's never done before. And it's not until Georg Tekia got older, when he started going to university and he started researching it, that he became more mad about it in retrospect. And from that, he does offer more detailed impressions of how he felt about it. And that's important, but because he was able to take this kind of horrible time and say how he actually enjoyed some of the time that he was there, I believe that actually kind of adds more validity to the statement. Like, I don't ever want to call Georg Tekia a liar or anything like that. I'm never trying to implement that. But the fact that he is able to give the good and the bad with such a horrible event does add more weight of realism to it, which is important, especially when we're talking about historical events. So yeah, George and Henry were very young when they were sent to Arkansas. But he does remember that his mom and his dad were actually very stressed about it. He also had a sister. The sister was newborn, so it was the five of them. So the story involves them living in this camp. The camps were very hastily built. They used tin roofs in the middle of Arkansas, so it was very hot. When they first got there, they remembered that. The food wasn't that good. The food was kind of rushed, not that great. and a lot of the living conditions were really bad. And George's father actually became the camp leader, and he took it upon himself to issue forth warnings and constables to the people in charge to actually improve their living conditions. So it's actually a beautiful story because it is one of history, it's one of childhood, and it's the story of George Takei. Like, everyone loves George Takei. For all you young people watching this, George Takei played Mr. Sulu in Star Trek. So he's a very famous, very beloved figure within the geek culture. He played all the way through, and he even mentions it at the end of the book because, of course he didn't die. He became a very famous actor. Of how he was actually first inspired to become an actor in the camps because they did give them Japanese movies, and Japanese movies were silent, and the only way you could give them voice is that you had another professional called a bonsai. Now, bonsai would sit at the side of the theater, and he would do all the voices while reading off of the script, and it was one of George's most favorite memories, from what I got the impression from the book, of him being able to go there and seeing this professional give so many characters their voices all at the same time. You can tell that really touched him, even as a small child. So the story kind of progresses like that. Just fun stories, him and his brother hanging out, and it does take a turn for the worse. As the war progressed, they kept on trying to hammer home that it was needed for the Japanese to remain in the internment camps. So they came up with something called the Loyalty Questionnaire. And the Loyalty Questionnaire was literally just a book. Not a book. Like a 4-page document that they forced them all to sit down to and answer questions. And a lot of the questions were like insulting and kind of stupid, like, hey, were you ever a spy for Japan? What's your opinion on Coca-Cola and cheeseburgers? But then they do get to more serious questions, and the 3 biggest questions that affected the most people's lives is, if given the opportunity, would you serve within the military even now that you're in these camps? Do you still hold any loyalty to the Japanese government at all? And do you trust the American government implicitly? And what was shocking is how many people actually answered yes to the first one. Out of all the Japanese internment camps, they managed to draw 50,000 soldiers who immediately left imprisonment in a camp in America and went and fought for America against Germany. But then the last 2, do you still hold loyalty to the Japanese government, and do you trust the American government implicitly? Both of Takei's parents, his mother and father, answered no to both because they still had family in Japan, and because, they didn't really fully trust the American government after being forced to live in a camp. This had them labeled as no-nos, people who answered no to 2 of those 3 important questions. And as such, the Takeis were forced to leave Camp Arkansas and move to Tule Lake. Tule Lake is another internment camp that they were putting the Japanese people, and Tule Lake was much more harsh than Arkansas. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Once they get to Tule Lake, it does become much more harsh, much more brutal. It's a good read. Like, I couldn't recommend this to anyone more if you're a George Takei fan, if you're a Star Trek fan, you want to know more about this guy's life, but also if you're a huge history buff, because this is a big part of American history that I think a lot of people just don't really pay that much attention to. That we did this during World War II. Another huge thing that I found kind of shocking is that neither George Takei nor his father rejected America altogether. George actually has this super intense conversation with his father when he's a teenager about, like, why didn't you resist? How could you still trust America after they did this to you? And George's father gives one of the heaviest quotes, I think, in the book, where he says, despite everything, despite being sent to an internment camp against my will, despite the harshness that they gave me, I still believe with all my heart that the American democracy system is the best in the world. And George, as a teenager, didn't understand that, and it actually created a lot of ripples within him. And then we get to the third part of the book, which is George's trip to life in LA and how he built up his acting career. He started in Broadway. He did Blackbird Fly, and then when he did a musical rendition of it, that's how he met Dr. Martin Luther King and how he participated in the Thousand Pound March. And then, of course, his eventual meeting up with the Star Trek crew and doing what he describes as the role of his life. And he loved playing Sulu so much. And in the last part, it is actually really nice to just get that last upbeat about how his life is turning around. He got this major role of a character that he really loves. And all in all, it just made a great read. Couldn't recommend it more. They Called Us Enemies by Georg Tekia. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Small channel still growing, and I'll be back next week with another